good morning. Welcome on this freezing cold morning. It's -4. Jim Mercier is here, and we'd like to talk about Racine, the history of Racine. This is one of your, not only, it's just a hobby of yours, but it's you carried it to the extreme where you have your own loft area at the
Racine Business
at the Von
Center.
Schrader building. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And you have the old signage, the old neon signs. You've got old artifacts from the history of Racine. So this is beyond, and I'm sure your wife, if I called her on the phone now, I could find out what horrors are going on at your house with all this stuff. I mean, it's just, you carry it to the extreme. You brought an artifact in this morning. We'll talk about that later. But it's here, and it looks like something out of ancient Rome or Greece. Anyway, we'll talk about it later. We're here to talk about the theaters of downtown Racine. There are none now, but there used to be a lot of them, because even all across America, the downtown theaters was where it was happening. There were no shopping mall theaters. There were no suburban theaters. It was all, like the song says, it's all happening downtown. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Do you know how many theaters, by the way, there were downtown at one time?
Well, just from the 50s and 60s, we had 4 that were operating.
Inside the city of Racine, that's big. And these were not like little tiny theaters. These were big theaters with over 1,000. Some of them had over 1,000 seats in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like today where you get like 100 seats in a theater in these multiplexes. But these were huge, and the theaters were ornate.
Oh, beautiful.
And let's start with some of the downtown theaters.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, we all remember the fun and excitement we had when we went to some of the downtown theaters. I personally remember the Rialto and Venetian very, very well. I mean, we were there probably every weekend. But we also had 2 smaller downtown theaters, Don, the Main Street and the Badger theaters. So join me today as we take a walk down memory lane and relive some of those pleasant memories of our downtown theaters. I have to say that my partner, Carol Gianforti, is bouncing back and forth between Arizona and here, so she will not be able to attend today. But we'll be back next month, and we'll be talking about, I think we're going to be talking about part 3 of some of our favorite TV shows from the 50s and 60s.
And don't feel bad for her. It's probably 75 degrees where she is right now.
Actually, she's here.
Oh, she is here?
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But
Now
she's in a nice warm house and a nice warm bed, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can start with the Badger Theater, Don. That opened as the Bijou in 1908. I think every town had a Bijou theater.
As a matter of fact, on my wall, I have a drawing of the Bijou we had framed. They bought it at an art show over at Gateway. My wife and my mother did, and we had it framed for me, and it's on my wall in my living room of the Bijou.
No kidding.
Was that the one at the corner of State and Main?
No, that was the Main Street. We'll get to that. The Bijou was on the 400 block of Main Street.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, that opened up in 1908, showing, of course, silent movies and had vaudeville acts. The name was changed to the State Theater in 1926 and then renamed once again to the Badger in 1941. It was located at 421 Main Street. Now that's the Northern Lights Gallery.
Oh, really? Okay.
The seating capacity was only 975, so quite small. They closed in 1952 because of its small size and competition from the larger Venetian and Rialto theaters. A small part of it is still standing. That's the entrance to the Northern Lights Gallery.
Oh, so if I go to Northern Lights Gallery, that's the actual opening to the Bijou Theater?
Yeah.
Or the Badger Theater?
Correct. Yeah, right.
Wow, I got to check that on the way home.
They demolished the old theater itself, the auditorium, but the entrance is still there.
Oh, okay.
And then we will move on to the Main Street Theater. That opened as the Orpheum Theater in 1912. That was located on the northwest corner of State and Main, if you can picture where that is. State and Main, the northwest corner. It was the smallest of our downtown theaters. And, of course, it also showed silent films and vaudeville acts. It became the Main Street Theater in 1930. The seating capacity was about 700. And did you know, Don, that in the early 40s, that was the home to the Racine Theater Guild?
Oh, yeah, okay. That's good, yeah.
They closed in 1951 due to its small size. After closing, and I think I heard from somebody, too, that it was infested with rats just before it closed and, of course, after it closed.
And we're not talking about the movie, Willard or Ben.
Yeah.
We're talking about real rats.
Yeah. So, and, of course, it was destroyed by vandals after it closed, too. It was finally demolished in 1958, and it's now just a parking lot.
Is that right next to where Econoprint is?
Yeah, not too far from there.
Yeah, because my other picture drawing is that theater. It was an opera house at one time, was it not? Am I talking about the same?
It was originally the signage says Bate Opera House.
Yeah. I have a picture of that too. A drawing, not a picture.
Okay, yeah. Then let's move on to the Rialto, and I think if you're a baby boomer, everybody remembers the Rialto Theater. That opened up in 1918, and of course, prior to 1928, you just showed silent movies or had vaudeville acts. It was adapted to talkies in 1928, as were all the theaters that were built before 1928. Talkies came out then. We'll get into that in a little bit. Seating capacity was about 1,200. It was the largest theater in Racine at the time. It was once owned by Stanley Warner. That was a large theater chain. They also owned the Badger and the Venetian. And when the attendance started to dwindle, they resorted to showing X-rated films in the early 70s. And they closed for good in 1974. It was our last downtown theater to close.
Do you know what the last movie was? I don't know. Do you know?
No.
I'm big on movie theaters, and a lot of the theaters where I grew up, I know what the last movie was.
Yeah.
Like the Pequot Theater was it was in our hometown. I know the last movie ever to play there was Rain Man.
No kidding.
Yeah. The last movie ever to play before they triplex the big Cinerama, which was a Stanley Warner theater in New York, was The Green Berets with John Wayne.
Oh, sure. What, 68 or so?
Yeah. So I know what the last movies were. I don't know why do I have this stuff in my head? I got so much more I've got to do in my head, and I have that. We're talking movie theaters. We're going to get to the Venetian next.
Yes.
Yeah, the big one. Jim Mercier is here at WRJN at 720, and we're talking about the old movie theaters of downtown Racine. Before the break there, during the break, I was asking you about the movie theater that used to be inside where Gelato is today downtown. And you were telling me that was what?
That was the original Bijou, Racine's first movie theater, as far as I can determine. But yeah, that was the original.
And there's remnants of it inside there. You can still see some of the remnants of when it was a movie theater.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about the big one, though, the Venetian now?
Yes. Well, the Rialto was demolished in 1978, so that takes care of the Rialto.
You said that was like at a porno house we went into.
It was in the early 70s. Yeah, it was. It showed X-rated movies.
That's sad. Drive-ins and movie theaters turned to pornos in the 70s because they were out of fashion downtown. Yeah.
Well, it was a moneymaker, I guess, for some people. Yeah. But I've saved the best for the end here, and that's the Venetian Theater. Now, that was built in 1928. It was Racine's newest and largest, and actually close to the Rialto. It was just on the same block. Yeah, on the same block. Now, that would seat 2,100 people, Don. And now compare that to the Wisconsin Theater in Milwaukee, downtown Milwaukee. Their capacity was 3,200. Can you imagine 3,200 people?
Radio City Music Hall, when they showed movies, was 6,000.
Oh, my gosh.
And the Lowe's Capitol, I believe, was close to 4,000 in New York.
Kidding.
And the Paramount was 5,000.
Oh, wow.
The Roxy was 5,000, too.
Yeah.
So they were big theaters back. Now theaters, 100, 200 seats.
That's it.
I know.
Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah. Now, the Venetian was built because of talking pictures or talkies. And that was one of 4 theaters in Racine that was built because of talkies. Besides the Venetian, the Capitol Theater, which was recently torn down in West Racine. The Uptown Theater was built in 28. That was originally called the Majestic. And the Granada Theater, which is still standing, too.
Yeah, you could see it. They still have it looks like a movie theater on the outside. Yeah,
I think it's a garage door service right now. But everybody wanted to go see these newfangled movies called talkies. You could actually hear the actors talk. Prior to that, they just had like an organ playing, if it was some exciting part, the organist would play, something, jumpy in that. But you just had to listen to an organ or maybe a piano, just accompaniment by those people playing an organ. But that changed when the talkies came. Now, the interior of the Venetian was considered to be one of the most beautiful in the entire Midwest. The entire Midwest. Now, as kids, Don, you probably too, we didn't pay attention to the architecture. We went there to see a movie.
That's right.
It could be the most beautiful theater in the world, and like hey, let's see the movie. Who cares about what it looks like? And that's how I was, too. I'd give anything to see the Venetian again. But
we always want to go back and say, oh, if I only had one more chance.
Yes, absolutely.
And we didn't take the chance when we had to.
Yep, that's right. It was Racine's best remembered theater. Everybody remembers the Venetian, besides being the largest and the most beautiful. It had Italian Renaissance plaster and many ornate statues. As a matter of fact, I brought one here to show Don. This is, how would you describe this, Don?
Gargoyle.
Gargoyle.
These are the things that were on the front of the theater. They used to have like a, I don't know what you call them, like a ledge on the theater, on the up, by the way above, about maybe 25 feet up.
Yeah.
They had a ledge, and these were under the ledges.
Yes.
And if you watch the old Disney cartoons, they come to life sometimes. But yeah, that's what this was. This was hung under the ledge. And Jim snuck there in the middle of the night with a ladder. His wife was at the bottom. He chiseled it off and said, here, catch this. It actually looks like it weighs more than it does. It looks like stone, but it's not.
It's actually plaster and horsehair is what it is. How would you describe that face? I mean, the tongue is hanging out, and
our boss here at the radio station.
I was going to say I had a blind date that looked something like that once. But
yeah.
The ceiling was really nice. It was complete with twinkling stars.
Yeah.
And floating clouds.
Yep. Yeah.
On a blue plaster sky. It was gorgeous.
Hold it right there. We're talking about the Venetian Theater now. Jim Mercier is here reminiscing about movie theaters in downtown Racine.
Don Rosen in the morning. WRJN.
Jim Mercier is here. We're talking about the downtown Racine theaters. We've talked about a bunch of them. And now we're down to the big one, right?
Yep,
we're talking about the Venetian Theater, which was literally across from Monument Square.
Yes.
And
that's correct.
Right now, is that the Johnson Wax building?
That's all Johnson's.
S.C. Johnson,
Yeah, financial.
Yeah. All right, so go ahead.
But actually, besides showing movies at the Venetian, they had many promotional gimmicks, including beauty contests, talent shows, animal acts right on stage, magicians. Now, get this, even a cow milking contest right on stage. Unbelievable.
By the way, before you get that, we left up, you were talking about the clouds and the stars.
Yeah.
There were a lot of theaters across America, these movie palaces, like in downtown Atlanta, the Fox Theater had the clouds and the stars. They had Wonder Theaters in New York City that had that. I'm sure there was theaters in Chicago. But that was all part of the experience. You go there, feel like you're outside.
Yes.
With the clouds and the stars. They made the whole movie going an experience. And ours was the Venetian.
Yes.
That did
that.
Exactly.
Yes.
They must have stopped that at a certain point. I don't know if it was profitable to keep doing that.
Yeah, I suppose.
You don't know when they stopped it?
No, it was quite expensive. But back in when the talkies started in the 28, all these theaters that were built were very, very gorgeous and beautiful. One tried to outdo the next one, and
big architectural firms made these theaters too.
Oh, yes,
they were very ornate.
Yeah,
I love this thing. I got to take a picture with you in this.
Oh.
I mean, this is. How did you get that, by the way? This was we were talking about this. This was under the ledge of the Venetian. They had different like theatrical masks. That's what they were back then. They had the masks of whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how did you get that?
I got a call from somebody in Racine who was involved in the demolition. And
this is not black market stuff, is it?
I don't know. He had a dozen of them, so I bought all 12.
Oh, you got
them in
12
my
of them?
basement. Yes, So I also have another statue called the Griffin. It's
this is heavier.
It is heavy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another statue I have, Don. It's like I say, it's called the Griffin. That's 4 feet tall, 3 feet long, and 2 feet wide. It's from Greek mythology, again called the Griffin. There were 6 of them gracing the interior of the Venetian. I have one. If you want to see one, there's one at Marsh Meredith Funeral Parlor. They have one on display. And the estate of Fred Hermes, he has 3 of them in his basement. When Fred was alive, he was entertaining people. he had an actual theater in his basement.
Yeah, I remember the organ and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And most of that stuff came from the Venetian. It was unbelievable to see that. You'd swear you're sort of back at the Venetian.
Well, if you want to see
again.
one of the Griffins, we'll just go over to your house.
Yeah, right. No, just go to the Marsh Meredith funeral home. But also, who appeared at the Venetian was my favorites, the Three Stooges. Now, the Venetian closed in 1971. Lack of parking, was downtown.
We're going to talk about that because
Yes.
when you did this presentation at SC Johnson at the Golden Rondelle, I couldn't stop thinking about that. And I brought it up to a bunch of people, and they kind of, what are you bringing that up for? It's not important.
Yeah.
But it was important.
Yes.
And then somebody came up with some. Anyway, can we talk about the parking now for a second?
Sure.
Okay. You get these theaters with 1,000 seats in them. Let's just say round numbers.
Yeah.
And let's say half those people show up. So only 500 seats are taken in each theater.
Yeah.
That's 2 theaters. That's still 1,000 seats because you
Sure.
got the Venetian and the Rialto.
Yeah.
So it's 1,000 seats. Now you figure maybe 2 or 3 people came together in a car.
Yep.
So maybe 300 cars amongst both. Where do you put 300 cars?
Yeah.
And keep this in mind.
Yeah.
The next showing of the movie would call for another 300 cars, and they would overlap because people come a little early.
Yep.
So now you got to have parking for almost 600 cars, and that's if it's a bad movie and you don't fill up more than half the theater.
Yeah.
Where does 600 cars park downtown?
Not downtown. I don't know where
Well,
you
how did you
park
get
it.
to the theater?
Well, a lot of people, I think, just took the bus for one thing. As kids, we took the bus.
But did adults take the bus on a Saturday night?
Probably not.
Well, how did where'd they park? See, we're so used to you go to the Marcus Renaissance and they have parking
Park
for
right
half
there.
the world.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But
exactly.
downtown, that doesn't exist back in the 40s and the 50s.
No, I remember parking on Lake Avenue and walking maybe 3 blocks, when they took
I just don't know how they did the parking. And there were other things downtown which took up
Sure.
parking as well, which talking about. And that's
right.
Only half these theaters, only half were sold. And they sold more than half during a Saturday night. I'm sure they were packed.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it. I would
know.
love somebody to give me an answer. Nobody knows.
No, well, that was a factor in their demise.
Yeah.
They closed in 1971, again, because of a lack of parking, high maintenance costs. That building was slowly deteriorating. And what happened was the Cinema 1 and 2 theater opened up on Washington Avenue. And like Don was saying, plenty of free parking. You could park, within a block of the entrance.
Now, where was that?
That was on Washington Avenue. That would be between Ohio and Highway 31 on the south side. Yeah, it's demolished now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that opened up, I think, in '68 and took a lot of business away from the downtown theaters. So again, it was demolished in 1977, along with the old Ace Grill. Most of the block stood empty for 25 years, except for the Inn on the Lake, the old Hotel Racine. But then SC Johnson built their Johnson Financial headquarters there in 2002. So the phrase, they don't make them like they used to, Don, certainly applied to the Venetian Theater. Now, when what started this whole adventure was the ticket booth. Remember the ticket booth, Don?
I remember when they used to be
Outside.
I remember seeing pictures of them outside,
right.
and they were standalone.
Yes, that's
so
right.
if the ticket person had a problem, they had to leave the ticket booth and go inside the theater.
Yeah. 20 below zero. Yeah, that's right. The top of the ticket booth was usually made of glass, and the person inside talked to us through the slats, and that's where you got your ticket as well. Now, there were many movies that had very, very long lines outside. I remember Old Yeller. Remember Old Yeller, the Disney movie?
Yes, and that's one of those movies you had to cry at when you saw Old Yeller at the end.
Yep.
Don't make me think about it. I'm going to cry.
1956 it came out.
Yeah.
The line went all the way around the block, all the way to Lake Avenue.
Now, where did these people park?
Right, good question. Other Disney movies, of course, were very popular. Snow White, Cinderella, Lady and the Tramp. They were all very popular and had long lines, too.
Here's the thing I don't. These older theaters. Now, Lady and the Tramp, the only reason I bring this up is they were the first widescreen CinemaScope movie Disney had. Before them, they were kind of the shape of almost like the television. They were that square look.
Yeah.
And then when movies had to compete with TV, they made widescreen because you can't see widescreen on TV. Now these theaters had to retrofit their screen. They had to spend a lot of money to retrofit the theaters because they weren't built for widescreen movies. The screens were square.
Yes.
So they had to retrofit them. They had to get new lenses for the projectors because the old lenses didn't show CinemaScope.
Yeah.
So it must have been a big ordeal back in the late 50s to retrofit these movie theaters.
Oh, yeah. And back then, Don, as you probably remember, there wasn't just one feature movie. There were two. We had two feature movies. We had coming attractions. We had something called a short subject. It was like a
little travelogue.
Something interesting. And, of course, the cartoons. Always the Roadrunner. Remember, was it Wile E.
Coyote and the Roadrunner, and everything was Acme.
Acme. Yeah, he bought everything from Acme.
And there was no dialogue in the entire cartoon.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody talked.
A lot of sound effects, but no dialogue.
Well, here's something else. Now, you talk about the double features.
Yeah.
Could you imagine sitting through a double feature today in a theater? I can't imagine it.
No.
But we used to do it all the time.
As kids.
When I was growing up, my parents used to take... I remember the last double feature I saw with my parents was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. Yeah. Each movie was 2 hours.
Sure.
So I sat through over 4 hours in that theater with my parents.
Yeah.
You would never dream about doing that today.
Yeah. Almost 5 hours with cartoons and coming attractions.
I mean, who would do that?
Yeah.
But they did it. We did it. I did it.
We'd see comedies, of course, westerns, or maybe an adventure, horror and monster movies. I know if I used to take girls there and for the horror movies because why? Because they'd sit really close.
Yeah, you were the guy.
They'd be afraid, you know. So later on, of course, the beach movies were very popular, Annette and Frankie. You know, everybody wanted to see them, and it was a series of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beach blanket bingo.
Yep, that's right.
Beach party.
Yep, that's right. Yep. But as we got older, you know, we would take the bus or walk downtown. We talked about the parking. That was one way to get around that. You just hop on the bus, take you right by the theater. Actually, every Saturday, you could go to the theater and probably spend, like Don said, maybe 5 hours there all day, and including Sunday afternoon, too. We would spend our allowance at the dime store, you know, and maybe go to the Cupie's for lunch, or maybe
I thought you were going to say you used to sneak candy in.
No, well, yeah, we did, of course, that too. Or remember the dime store counters?
Yeah,
Go have lunch there. But the point is, we'd spend all day downtown on a Saturday.
Talking about the old downtown theaters that are no longer there. Some of them still have the Granada. The building is still there. And it looks like a movie theater on the outside. You can see where the movie posters used to be. And I was in there. It's a storage in there now. But the guy who has it, he had a lot of storage in there. And he let me walk around, which was kind of nice. And he said, yeah, come on in. And I was going to tell you a quick story because I didn't want to forget. When I lived in Atlanta, I'm walking through downtown, and I see this facade of a theater. It's all boarded up. It looks like something similar, but I can't put my fingers on it. So I peek behind the facade of this thing, and I see, wow, pillars. I look inside the window, and there's German shepherds walking around guarding what's ever in there. But it's all storage. There's nothing, recognizable. And I look behind the facade, and I see these pillars, and then I know what it is. It's the Lowe's Grand, where Gone with the Wind had its world premiere with Clark Gable.
Yeah.
And who was the author? Can't think of her name. Margaret Mitchell. She was there.
Yeah.
They were all there in 1939 for the premiere, and that was the Lowe's Grand Theater.
Wow.
And I said to somebody on the street, I said, well, this is the Lowe's Grand? He goes, yeah. I said, when did it close up? He said back in the, late 60s, early, because when I saw it, it was 1979, I think, 78.
Yeah.
He's back in the 60s. It was still a movie theater, but they closed it down. Now it's just a warehouse. And they put a facade in front of the pillars there. And I said, wow, where I'm standing is where Clark Gable stood, Margaret Mitchell, all these people have Gone with the Wind. Olivia de Havilland stood on this spot.
Yeah.
It's really something, but it was sad
to
see it. It's now torn down, but it was, wow, this is the Lowe's Grand Theater.
Hallowed ground, huh?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
So actually, on a Saturday, our parents could have gotten rid of us for the entire day.
Mine did.
Yeah. And, of course, we all remember the snack counter. We always went there for popcorn and candy. You know, that popcorn was just loaded with fat and cholesterol, but it tasted so good.
I
didn't
know.
it, Don? Yeah, that butter and salt.
No,
and
butter flavoring.
Oh, yeah.
The butter flavoring.
Flavoring,
Which is probably better than the butter because
Yeah.
butter's loaded with fat
Yeah.
and junk.
Remember movie candy, Milk Duds, Boston Baked Beans? Remember those? No? Okay. Good and plenty, of course.
I remember the Red Hots.
Yeah, the Red Hots. That was another one.
Milk Duds.
Yep.
Junior Mints.
Junior Mints. That was another one. The Snow Caps.
Snow Caps. I love Snow Caps.
Yep. Raisinets. Dots.
Goobers.
Goobers, yes. And pumpkin seeds. Remember, they were real salty. It had the white coating on it.
My wife went to one of the stores recently and bought a bunch of movie theater stuff at one of the stores that sold the boxes. And we watch TV. We bring out the movie theater boxes. She
I'll
had,
be darned.
She had Milk Duds there the other day.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Bit of Honey was another one I
Bit of
remember
Honey.
there. Yeah. Most of the larger theaters had balconies. You don't see that anymore. The Venetian did, of course. And there was one unwritten rule. And if you're a baby boomer, I'm sure you remember this. You would never sit directly underneath the front row of the balcony.
Because they drop things off.
Yes. If you're in the balcony, you're done with your soda or candy, you just give it the old heave-ho and throw it over.
Oh, come on.
And
Are you telling us you did that?
I don't know if I did it, but I was on the receiving end a few
Go to
times.
kitty matinees. They were throwing food, the candy at the screen.
Oh, you learn the hard way not to sit there. I remember getting a cup of ice thrown on my head once when I was there, and there's nothing you can do. You can't go up there and ask who did it because there were
Do you
so
remember,
many people.
Remember the matrons in the white outfits used to come parading up and down the aisle? They're the kitty matinees. They used to come with a flashlight to make sure, and kids were acting up. Because it was a kitty matinee. You get a bunch of hooligans in there. And she used to shine the flashlight in your face. You, get up. Right in the middle of the movie.
Well, the balcony was also used for making out. Remember those days?
No.
It was it was dark, And if you had a car, of course, if you wanted to make out, you'd go to the outdoor theater, but they weren't open in the winter times. Or if you had a car, you'd go to the Point. I know, Don, you're not from here, but there was a place in Wind Point called the Point, and that's where you went for your watching the submarine races. But that's where the balcony came into play. It was dark, and that's where you would take a date. Sneaking in. Did you ever sneak in a theater,
No.
Don?
No, I never did. Never did.
Okay. Well, the Venetian was almost impossible.
I'm a good boy.
Yeah.
My mommy raised me as a good boy.
Well, tell me off the air how you really are. But
I really didn't. I never snuck into a theater.
Oh, okay.
I paid.
Really?
Yeah, I paid.
Okay. All right. The Venetian was almost impossible to sneak into, but the Rialto was a different story because they had a door, a fire escape that faced the alley. There was an alley between the Rialto and the building next door, which was the old Hotel Racine. And the fire door was there, the perfect way to get in. So we couldn't just, a group of us, maybe 7 or 8, we couldn't just send one person in to buy a ticket because it would be suspicious. They'd watch it. So we'd send 2 guys in. That way you avoid suspicion. And they would walk to that door and quietly open it.
What, to avoid 30 cents? Is that why you did all this
35
stuff?
cents probably.
So you risk being a felon for 30 cents, 35
right.
cents,
yeah,
whatever.
Something like that. They opened up the door and then we'd go. We quickly went to our seats and enjoyed the movie. It was, the good old days, right? But a lot of popular movies, Donna, you probably remember a lot of these too. Hard Day's Night with the Beatles,
Yes,
of course. That was
1964.
Yes. Very long lines for that. Elvis and Blue Hawaii. The James Bond movies were very popular.
Goldfinger.
Yes.
I love that movie.
That's right, yeah. Remember as a kid seeing 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
The Disney version? Yeah.
Yes.
With James Mason. James Mason was in that movie.
Yeah, Peter Lorre was too.
Yeah, he played, James Mason, I think, played Captain Nemo.
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Peter Lorre, he got a lot bigger back then. I think. Yeah, remember that? Swiss Family Robinson, of course. Sound of Music. The Birds. Remember the Birds?
Love that movie, Bodego Bay.
Yes.
With that was a scary movie because, especially when they found the guy with his eyes pecked out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. People was frightened from that movie.
Yeah, that's right. And, of course, Psycho with the shower scene. That was another very, very popular movie.
People didn't take showers they were afraid for them when they went home.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, nobody wanted to take a shower because they were frightened from that movie. I don't know who they think Norman Bates was going to show up at their house.
Yeah.
When I was at the Universal lot, I saw the original Psycho house there, and that's something to see. That's historic.
Yeah.
And the Bates Motel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. I'll be darned. But, the good old days of these downtown theaters, how ornate they were, they're pretty much past now. You don't really see anymore. Of course, you can go to the Riverside in Milwaukee, Paps, and see how it used to be. But Racine has nothing left.
Well, downtown Milwaukee, they still had the, it was the headquarters for Marcus Theaters was in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the name of the Warner Theater.
Warner.
Then it became the Grand.
Okay.
And up until the 80s, they were still showing movies in there because I went there. They triplexed it. Not triplexed it. They what do they call it? Twinned it.
Yeah, okay.
They just took the balcony and they extended it to the end, and it was awful. And then they untwinned it later on. And so that was kind of nice. They did. The Wisconsin Theater right there on 7th of Wisconsin was right across the street from our radio station.
Yeah.
Kung Fu movies back in the 80s.
Yeah.
But everybody remembers. Did you actually sneak into a theater? Let's get this out now. The statute of limitations is
That's
up.
right. The statute of limitations are. I did.
You did sneak into a theater?
Oh, yeah.
My
That was half
goodness.
the fun to get in for nothing. You know, as a kid. We were probably maybe, 16 years old or whatever.
16 you were doing it?
Yeah.
You hooligan?
A juvenile delinquent.
Oh, man. I look at you in a different light now.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Jim, we actually brought the sheriff by this morning.
Oh, thanks, Don.
Because we're waiting for this confession now.
Yeah, there's the handcuffs, I see. Well, okay. Lynn, I'm not coming home. I'll be in jail.
Downtown theaters are gone now for the most part.
Yeah.
Because the real estate downtown is a couple of reasons. Parking was a big reason.
Yep.
And shopping malls opened up, and they had what they call urban sprawl, where people started moving out to the suburbs.
Yep.
And they built suburban theaters, so they didn't come downtown anymore. And a lot of people didn't live downtown, so there was no reason to come downtown. And these big barns of these theaters were expensive to heat, to keep the upkeep, the downtown prices. I mean, it just couldn't afford it after a while. So they went by the by, and they were sold to different types of venues and so forth. And in downtown, we still see pictures of the Venetian and the Rialto, but it's near where the S.C. Johnson building is now.
Yep.
And you can still walk the street where the ghosts were of the old Venetian and Rialto.
Yeah.
And
That block had 2 theaters.
well, Chicago, too. Downtown Chicago had all these great downtown theaters. Some of them are still there, like the Chicago Theater. The Oriental is still, I saw Wicked there, the Broadway musical Wicked. So they're still there, but they're used for live performances now, no more movies.
Yeah.
It's like the old Radio City Musical. It used to be a movie theater. Now it's just live productions and TV shows are based out of there.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, there was a movie theater.
Yeah.
So
think
True
Milwaukee-
Grit, The Odd Couple, and all those movies.
Yeah. I think Milwaukee has a couple small neighborhood theaters. Avalon, I think, is still showing
Yeah, and they
movies.
show retro movies at
Yes,
a lot of these
right.
theaters. The old, and they get the Oriental Theater,
Oh, yes.
the Oriental, and the Downer.
The Downer.
Yeah, but they're mainly now used for specialty theaters.
Yeah.
Thank you. When's the next time you're coming in?
Next month, I'll be back with Carol. We'll talk about favorite TV shows again from the 50s and 60s. Part 3, our final one.
Okay.
And we're going to move on to something else.
Okay. Thank you, my we're Jim Mercier. Always good to, and we'll take a picture of you with this thing. And maybe we'll post it somewhere for you. Thank you, Jim.